I found out my CEO was living a double life, and I exposed him. I always knew there was something off about Mr. Bennett. As a junior financial analyst at Lux Tech Industries, I wasn't exactly rubbing elbows with the CEO, but I saw enough to know he was different. Unlike other executives who flaunted their wealth, Henry Bennett was quiet, calculated. He had a reserved presence and almost eerie calm about him. It wasn't until I found the black folder that everything unraveled. It started with an email, a late-night request from Bennett's office assistant, Melissa, asking me to review some quarterly financial reports. Nothing unusual, except that the reports weren't stored in our usual system. Instead, she sent a direct link to a hidden drive I had never seen before. Curious, I clicked the link and found a folder labeled Personal buried inside corporate documents. I hesitated. This wasn't my business, but something inside me, it felt like instinct, told me to look. Inside, I found two sets of records. One belonged to LuxTech, listing revenue, partnerships, and expenditures. But the other? It was linked to a mysterious offshore company called Orion Global. My stomach twisted. Orion Global had identical transactions to LuxTech, but the money was being funneled into a separate account. Why would our CEO need a shadow company with identical financials? And then I saw the names. High-profile clients, tech investors, politicians. But next to each name, the transactions weren't for tech consulting. They were labeled arrangements, a life in the shadows. I dug deeper. Bennett had a second identity. His home address? It led to two locations. One was a penthouse in the city, the other, a secluded estate an hour away. Was this where the money was going? I needed more. My hands shook as I searched social media, business records, anything. Then I found a photo. It was Bennett, but not as I knew him. Instead of his usual designer suits and graying hair, he was dressed in leather, sunglasses, and a completely different haircut. He wasn't in an office. He was at an underground club, arm in arm with someone who looked disturbingly like a crime boss. That's when I knew. My CEO wasn't just running a business. He was running something much darker. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding like a war drum. Henry Bennett, the CEO of LuxTech, the man who shook hands with billionaires and spoke at innovation summits, was also a ghost in the underworld. But what exactly was he doing? The offshore accounts, the shady arrangements, the second identity. I needed proof, real proof. The next day, I walked into the office, acting like nothing was wrong. But inside, my mind was racing. I needed someone on the inside, someone who knew more than I did. Melissa. Bennett's personal assistant had been at LuxTech for nearly a decade. She knew things. And judging by the nervous look in her eyes every time he walked past, I had a feeling she knew something about his secret life. That afternoon, I took a risk. I approached her in the break room. "Hey, Melissa," I said casually, stirring my coffee. "I was going through some reports last night and found some weird things about Mr. Bennett." Her fingers froze around her mug. She didn't look at me, just stared into her coffee like it could save her. "You didn't see anything," she muttered. "That's the thing," I whispered, leaning in. "I think I did." She closed her eyes, inhaling sharply. Then she looked at me and said something that made my stomach drop. "If you found anything, then you need to stop digging. Right now." I should have listened. I really should have. But instead, I doubled down. That night, I drove out to the second address, the mysterious estate hidden in the woods. The driveway was long, lined with cameras. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress. From a distance, I could see luxury cars parked in the back, people moving in and out like clockwork. And then, Bennett. But not the Bennett I knew. Dressed in a black shirt and leather gloves, he stood beside a man in a crisp white suit, shaking hands. A thick briefcase exchanged hands. I took out my phone and zoomed in to snap a picture, just as a pair of headlights flared to life behind me. I wasn't alone. A black SUV roared to life, peeling down the driveway toward me. I turned and ran, Branches tore at my arms as I sprinted back to my car. My breath came in sharp gasps. The SUV was getting closer, fast. I jumped into my car, started the engine, and slammed on the gas. The SUV followed. They knew. They knew I had seen too much. I tore down the darkened road, my tires screeching as I made a sharp turn onto the highway. My heart was a hammer in my chest. If they caught me, I didn't want to think about it. My phone buzzed. A text? Unknown number. You should have stopped digging. I was in deep. And now, I was being hunted. The SUV stayed on my tail for miles, its headlights glaring through my rearview mirror like a predator locked onto its prey. My hands clenched the wheel, knuckles white. They weren't just following me. They were chasing me. I swerved onto a side street, barely missing a red light, then took another sharp turn into a gas station parking lot. My heart pounded as I killed the engine and ducked down. The SUV sped past. I sucked in a shaky breath. They lost me. For now. But I wasn't safe. I drove home, parked 2 blocks away, and took the long way around on foot to make sure no one followed me. When I finally locked my apartment door behind me, I collapsed against it, shaking. I needed help. And I knew exactly who to call. Ryan Carter, my best friend since college. A cybersecurity expert, conspiracy theorist, and the one person crazy enough to help me take down a corrupt CEO. 20 minutes later, Ryan was sitting in my kitchen, scrolling through the files I'd copied from the secret folder. His eyes widened. Dude. He turned the laptop toward me. This isn't just money laundering. This is human trafficking. The words hit like a slap. What? My stomach lurched. Ryan pointed to a series of transactions labeled deliveries, large sums of money exchanged between Bennett and Orion Global. The locations? Not just luxury destinations. Some were private airstrips, ports, even high-security compounds. Bennett isn't just running a shadow company, Ryan said. He's selling people. I swallowed hard, nausea rising. I had uncovered a criminal empire. And now, they knew I knew. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Unknown. You're playing a dangerous game. Ryan glanced at it. They know you're involved. We need to move fast. My mind raced. We had to expose Bennett, but how? The police? Number, he had powerful connections. If we went through normal channels, it could backfire. We need undeniable proof, I said. Something that ties him directly to the trafficking operation. Ryan smirked. I might know how. He cracked his knuckles and started hacking. We spent the next hour combing through hidden servers, bypassing security firewalls, searching for anything that could bring Bennett down. And then, we hit gold. A live feed. Ryan found a security camera feed linked to Bennett's estate. A real-time video. And what we saw made my blood run cold. Bennett was there, standing in a dimly lit room. Behind him, a group of people were locked in a cage. Men, women, even teenagers. Terrified. And then, Bennett turned and looked directly at the camera, like he knew we were watching. Ryan yanked the plug on his laptop. They're on to us. And then, my apartment lights cut out. We weren't just watching them. They were coming for us. The apartment plunged into darkness. Ryan and I froze. Outside, footsteps crunched on the gravel. A car door slammed. Then another. They're here, Ryan whispered. My mind raced. No way this was a coincidence. They must have tracked our location the moment we hacked into their system. I grabbed Ryan's sleeve and yanked him toward the back door. We needed to run. But as soon as I unlocked the door, a figure stepped into view. Tall, dressed in black, gun in hand. Nowhere to hide, Ryan reacted first. He grabbed the closest thing, a metal coffee mug, and hurled it at the guy's head. The moment it hit, we bolted. We tore through the hallway, heading for the fire escape. A loud bang rang out behind us, a gunshot. They were shooting. I kicked open the window and jumped onto the metal landing. Ryan was right behind me. We scrambled down the stairs as fast as we could. Below, a black SUV skidded to a stop. Another man stepped out. We were trapped. Ryan's eyes darted around. The alley. We jumped the last few steps, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot up my ankle, but I ignored it. We sprinted into the alleyway, the sounds of boots pounding the pavement behind us. I could hear them shouting into radios. They weren't just chasing us, they were coordinating. We ran until my lungs burned, until we turned a corner and saw salvation. A crowded street. People, cars, safety. Ryan grabbed my arm. Blend in, walk normal. We slowed our pace, slipping into the sidewalk crowd just as two men in suits stormed out of the alley behind us. I risked a glance over my shoulder. One of them was on his phone, talking. And then he looked right at me. Run, Ryan shouted. We dashed across the street, narrowly missing a cab. Horns blared. People shouted. Up ahead, I spotted a subway station. If we could get underground, we might lose them. We leaped over the turnstiles, ignoring the angry shouts from the station guards. I glanced back. The men weren't far behind. A train was arriving. It was now or never. We sprinted for the doors just as the warning chime went off. I dove inside, Ryan right behind me. The doors slammed shut just as our pursuers reached the platform. One of them pounded on the glass. His face was calm. Too calm. He lifted his phone, holding it up so we could see the screen. A message. You think you're safe? Then another text came through on my phone. Unknown number? We have Melissa. My blood ran cold. They had Melissa. Ryan clenched his jaw. We need to end this. Now. I looked at him, breathing hard. There was no turning back. If we didn't stop Bennett tonight, Melissa, and who knows how many others, might never get out alive. We were done running. It was time to take Bennett down. Melissa was in danger. The text message flashed on my screen like a death sentence. We have Melissa. Ryan and I sat in the dimly lit subway car, the world outside blurring as the train sped through the tunnels. My mind raced. She helped me, I muttered. She warned me to stop digging. And now they took her to shut her up, Ryan said, jaw tight. This is bad. Bad was an understatement. Melissa was the only one inside Lux Tech who could help us. If Bennett and his people had her, we were running out of time. I turned to Ryan. We need to find her, now. Ryan nodded, already typing furiously on his laptop. I might have an idea. Ryan was a genius when it came to hacking, and I was betting everything on that now. He pulled up Lux Tech's security system and searched for any recent activity. If they took her, they either brought her to Bennett's estate or somewhere worse. Seconds later, he found something. A restricted access security feed. I held my breath as the screen loaded. And there she was. Melissa. She was tied to a chair in a dark concrete room, her wrists bound, her face bruised. A single overhead light flickered above her. She wasn't alone. Bennett stood in front of her, speaking calmly. Too calmly. Like he wasn't just threatening her life. He was planning something much worse. My fists clenched. Then he turned his head slightly and looked directly at the camera. I swore under my breath. He knows we're watching. Ryan shut the laptop. We have to move, now. We had one option, break into Bennett's estate and get Melissa out. But we weren't just going to rescue her. We were going to expose everything. Ryan and I gathered what we had, the files, the hidden transactions, the footage from the security feed, and uploaded it to a secure online drive. If we didn't make it out, the world would. Then we armed ourselves. Ryan pulled open a duffel bag. Inside, a taser, a couple of lockpicks, and a stolen keycard from an ex-Lux Tech employee. Where did you get this? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Don't ask questions, he said, stuffing it in his pocket. With that, we grabbed my car and hit the road. Bennett's estate was an hour outside the city, hidden behind thick trees and a steel gate. But Ryan had hacked into the security logs earlier. and we knew the guards rotated shifts at exactly 11:45 p.m. That gave us a 5-minute window. We parked a quarter-mile away and crept toward the back entrance. A single guard stood watch. Ryan pulled out the taser. "You take the left, I take the right? Let's do it." I moved quickly, silent on my feet. The guard barely had time to react before Ryan hit him with the taser, and I grabbed his keycard. The back door clicked open. We were in. Inside, the estate was eerily silent. I checked the security feed on my phone. Melissa was still in the basement, and so was Bennett. We moved fast, weaving through the halls, avoiding security cameras. Every second counted. Ryan and I reached the basement door. I swiped the keycard. It beeped. Unlocked. We pushed inside. Melissa's head snapped up. Her eyes widened. "What the hell are you guys doing here?" "Saving your ass," Ryan muttered, cutting the ropes from her wrists. A slow clap echoed behind us. We turned. Bennett. He stood at the doorway, arms crossed. And behind him? 2 armed guards. "You've been very busy," he said, his voice dangerously smooth. "Stealing my files, hacking my systems, and now breaking into my home?" I swallowed hard, stepping in front of Melissa. "You're finished, Bennett. We have everything. The offshore accounts, the trafficking deals. The proof," Bennett smirked. "Do you now?" Then he pulled out his phone and held it up. The screen showed a countdown timer. It read 0045, 0044, 0043. My stomach dropped. "What is that?" Bennett's smirk widened. "That," he said, "is how long you have until my men wipe every last trace of your so-called evidence from existence." Ryan cursed under his breath. "He's erasing everything." I clenched my fists. Number we had come too far. We had risked too much. Bennett thought he had won. But I had one last move to play. I pulled out my phone and hit send. Checkmate. Bennett's phone buzzed. His expression flickered. He checked the screen. Then, for the first time ever, his smirk vanished. Because on his phone, in real time, I had just uploaded everything to the press, the police, and every major news outlet in the country. The files, the footage, the transactions. The whole world now knew the truth. Bennett's face darkened. "You little—" Before he could finish, sirens blared in the distance. Ryan grinned. "Sounds like the cops got our message." Bennett's guards exchanged nervous glances. They weren't being paid enough for this. Bennett took a step toward me, rage in his eyes. "You think this is over?" he hissed. I stared him down. "No, Bennett. It's over for you." Seconds later, the front doors burst open. Armed police stormed inside. The guards dropped their weapons immediately. "Bennett?" He made a run for it. He didn't make it far. The cops tackled him to the ground, pinning him as he thrashed. I walked forward, standing over him. "This is what happens," I said, "when you think no one is watching." Bennett was charged with human trafficking, fraud, and a dozen other crimes. His entire operation crumbled overnight. Melissa was safe. Ryan and I? We became the whistleblowers who took down one of the most powerful criminals in the country. As for me, I learned something that night. No matter how powerful someone thinks they are, the truth will always come out. Bennett was gone, arrested, exposed. His empire crumbled in real time as news outlets ran the story nonstop. LuxTech CEO involved in human trafficking scandal. His face was everywhere. It should have been over, but it wasn't. A week after Bennett's arrest, I was still looking over my shoulder. LuxTech had collapsed overnight. Investigations into the company uncovered even more corruption than I had expected. Illegal arms deals, money laundering, connections to dangerous people. People who still hadn't been caught. Ryan and I met up at a quiet cafe, both of us keeping an eye on the door. Melissa had gone into witness protection, her testimony crucial to taking down the rest of Bennett's network. Ryan sipped his coffee. You seem paranoid. Bennett wasn't working alone. I muttered. There are still people out there who want this buried. Ryan leaned in. So what now? We lay low? I glanced at my phone. There was one last file I hadn't shared. Something buried deep in Bennett's encrypted records. A name. Someone even higher up than Bennett. I met Ryan's gaze. No, I said. We finished this. Bennett was just the beginning. A week after his arrest, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. LuxTech had fallen apart, but some people, the real power behind Bennett, were still out there. And I had proof. The final file. Before we took down Bennett, Ryan and I hacked into his deepest, most encrypted files. That's where we found one last name. Victor Langston, a billionaire investor, politician, the kind of man who had enough power to make people disappear. Bennett was just his pawn. And now? Victor knew we were coming for him. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. A deep, controlled voice spoke. You should have walked away. A chill ran down my spine. You think you did something heroic? The man continued. You exposed a nobody, but you just made enemies with the people who run the world. I swallowed hard. Victor Langston. Silence. Then a chuckle. You have no idea what you've started. Click. The line went dead. I turned to Ryan. He knows. Ryan exhaled sharply. Then we hit first. We had one shot at bringing Langston down. Bennett's crimes had been ugly. Human trafficking, fraud, money laundering. But Langston was worse. He wasn't just a corrupt billionaire. He owned the system. The police wouldn't touch him. The government? Complicit. So we had to go bigger. We needed a leak so massive it couldn't be ignored. Ryan grinned. Time to burn everything down. I nodded. It was time to end this. But then, as we packed up our gear, Ryan's laptop suddenly shut down. The lights in my apartment flickered. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Too slow. Then, a loud crash. My front door was kicked open. They had found us. The door slammed open. 3 men in tactical gear stormed in, guns raised. No badges, no hesitation. Ryan and I barely had time to react. Get down, one of them barked. We had been careful. We thought we were ahead. But Langston? He was always a step further. I raised my hands slowly, my heart pounding. Ryan's laptop was still open, the file transfer at 92%. We just needed a few more seconds. I met Ryan's eyes. He knew what I was thinking. One last move. The sacrifice. Ryan lunged first. A distraction. A split second of chaos. I dove for the laptop. A gunshot shattered the air. Ryan crumpled. My body froze. And then adrenaline took over. I grabbed the laptop, ignoring the screams and the pounding of boots. 96%. 97%. One of the men yanked me back, slamming me into the floor. A boot crushed my chest. 98%. 99%. Langston's voice crackled over a radio. Shut it down. 100%. The screen blinked. Transfer complete. A siren wailed in the distance. The world blurred. Then, a second gunshot. Everything went black. The truth will out, I woke up to the sound of news anchors. My body felt heavy. Hospital bed. IV drip. The TV played on the wall. Massive leak exposes international corruption. Victor Langston indicted for organized crime, fraud, and conspiracy. Hundreds of officials implicated. I exhaled. We did it. Ryan. I closed my eyes. He didn't make it. But his sacrifice wasn't in vain. Langston was in cuffs. His empire was burning. And as I lay there, alive but forever changed, I knew one thing. The truth always wins.